Today, we dive into the eerie and haunting moments of the Korean War. From ghostly battlefields to chilling stares of captured soldiers, these photos will leave you unsettled. Welcome to Timeless Frames, where we begin this haunting journey through history. In this image, a young Marine closes his eyes in prayer, seeking safety for himself and his comrades. Moments later, he joins the 1st Marine Division in a fierce assault. This photo shows 2 young North Korean soldiers, now prisoners, standing before a U.S. soldier, their fate uncertain as they face questioning. In Korea, September 18, 1950. This picture illustrates, glowing under the spotlight, Marilyn Monroe flashes a dazzling smile for the cameras after entertaining troops with the USO Camp Show on February 17, 1954. It illustrates laughter and cheers filling the air as soldiers enjoy the legendary Bob Hope's performance. A brief escape from the realities of war. In Seoul, Korea, October 23, 1950. In this image, Mickey Rooney and his USO troop share laughs and hot meals with the troops. A brief escape from war. On October 12, 1952. This image captures the raw pain of war. A grieving soldier clings to his fallen comrade, while a corpsman silently fills out casualty tags. The weight of loss was heavy in Hakdong-ni, Korea, on August 28, 1950. This photo shows the night sky ablaze as U.S. Marines unleash a devastating rocket barrage, lighting up the battlefield with destruction. The sheer force of war erupted in Korea in 1951. This image takes us deep into the front lines, where infantrymen crouch in narrow tunnels just 40 yards from enemy lines, their nerves steeled for the next brutal assault. Heartbreak Ridge, August 10, 1952. This photo tells a story of resilience. A wounded Marine, his head bandaged and his face weary, waits in silence for transport to a field hospital. Korea, 1950. This image reveals the quiet agony of war as Thomas Conlon, injured while crossing the Nakhtong River, rests on a stretcher at an aid station. The battle left its mark on September 19, 1950. This image captures a heart-wrenching farewell. A young officer and his wife sit in silence, their eyes fixed on the carrier that will soon take him to war. San Diego, 1950. This photo freezes a moment of quiet reflection as Clarence Whitmore enjoys a simple meal, his eyes scanning the latest war news, a brief escape from the chaos. Sangju, Korea, August 9, 1950. This image speaks of longing. During a rare break in battle, PFC, Dwight X writes home, his mind wandering miles away to loved ones. Korea, November 15, 1951. This photo is a final embrace. CPL John Sims holds his wife and infant son close, memorizing their faces before stepping onto the ship bound for Korea. 1950. This image is a moment of uneasy rest. Marines sit beside a Korean hut, their ears still ringing from the echoes of a silenced sniper. September 24, 1951. This photo captures resilience. A weary Korean girl trudges past a stalled tank, her little brother clinging to her back, carrying the weight of war on her small shoulders. Haengju, Korea, June 9, 1951. This image tells a story of endurance. Edward Wilson, wounded in battle, sits in pain, his eyes fixed on the horizon as he waits for evacuation. Korea, February 16, 1951. This photo reveals an odd contradiction. Surrounded by nearly 3,000 pinups, including Marilyn Monroe, these Marines still crave more reminders of home. October 28, 1952. This image captures danger at its peak. A soldier from the 77th Engineer Company carefully prepares to remove a deadly mine. One wrong move separating life from death. September 15, 1950. This photo is history in the making. General Douglas MacArthur stands tall before a crowd of 50,000, his words echoing through Soldiers Field. Chicago, April 1951. This image is a moment of relief. Wounded by mortar fire, PFC, Orvin L. Morris finally rests, the rhythmic clatter of the hospital trains his temporary lullaby. Busan, July 29, 1950. This photo speaks of loss. Amidst the ruins of war, an elderly Korean woman sifts through the wreckage, searching for anything worth salvaging. Seoul, November 1st, 1950. This image captures innocence lost. A small South Korean child sits alone on the street, abandoned in the chaos of war, eyes searching for a familiar face. Incheon, September 16, 1950. This image captures British troops departing Hong Kong, setting sail to join UN forces in Korea. It was September 1950, and they had no idea what awaited them on the battlefield. This photo shows Private Ron Pattison being welcomed by U.S. Sergeant Robert Tutt in a rare moment of camaraderie. Korea in September 1952 saw troops from different nations fighting together for a common cause. This image depicts American Marines advancing through the outskirts of Incheon, their eyes fixed on the enemy ahead. It was September 16, 1950, and the battle for control had only just begun. This photo shows the Royal Ulster Rifles digging trenches, preparing for an imminent Chinese attack. In Happy Valley on January 2, 1951, every second counted as they braced for the onslaught. This image captures an American M46 tank leading British Centurion tanks across the Imjin River. The undated photo reminds us of the immense firepower needed to push forward in the war. This photo shows a British infantry patrol cautiously moving through the night, their weapons raised. In the darkness, every shadow was a potential threat, making each step a gamble. This image captures a touching moment as a British soldier chats with Korean children in a rare break from war. The undated photo is a reminder that humanity persists even in times of conflict. This photo shows the Scottish Borderers mortar team firing under the scorching sun, their determination unwavering. On July 15, 1952, the heat of both battle and weather tested their endurance. This image captures a British gunner reading the Gunner Regimental Journal, a brief escape from war. It was April 1952, and even on the front lines, soldiers found moments of normalcy. This photo shows Private D.J. Dixon resting after tirelessly building an ammunition pit. The undated scene captures the exhaustion of war, where even moments of rest are precious. This image depicts Black Watch soldiers pausing before heading out on a dangerous patrol. In Korea, 1952, every mission carried the risk of not returning. This photo shows Korean Service Corps workers repairing a monsoon drainage ditch, supervised by sapper Edwin Darwood. Even in war, essential infrastructure had to be maintained for survival. This image captures a Sikorsky H-5 helicopter delivering supplies to cut-off units. Korea, 1951, saw helicopters becoming a lifeline for troops stranded in enemy territory. This photo shows Scottish borderers operating a 2-inch mortar, firing against fortified Chinese positions. His image captures the intensity of the ongoing battle. This image depicts Private Jack Crawford carefully walking through a hillside trench in Korea. This image reminds us of the lonely, dangerous paths soldiers had to take. This photo shows British and Australian officers sharing tea after a long, exhausting day. In the midst of war, small rituals like this provided a moment of normalcy. This image captures Privates Ken Meade and Eric Collier eating at a frontline post, savoring a rare quiet moment. In this image, food was a brief comfort amid constant danger. This photo shows British soldiers preparing to fire on Chinese positions, a Bren gun at the ready. This image reveals the tense moments before an assault. This image captures Black Watch soldiers posing for a quick photo before heading out on patrol. Korea, 1952, was a battlefield where every soldier knew the weight of uncertainty. This photo shows Private H. Dawson standing guard over 2 captured North Korean soldiers. This image reflects the shifting power dynamics of war. This image captures Scottish borderers receiving care packages from home, a brief reminder of loved ones. Bren gunner Duncan Smith looks on, his mind momentarily elsewhere. This photo shows a wounded British lieutenant being treated by U.S. medics near Uijeongbu. In April 1951, medics worked tirelessly to save lives amid the chaos of war. This image depicts Scottish borderers honoring their fallen comrades at a UN cemetery. On August 12, 1952, in Busan, sorrow and gratitude filled the air. This photo captures Major T.H. Wilson read ceasefire instructions to his unit. Korea, July 27, 1953, marked the beginning of an uneasy peace. This image shows Australian soldiers walking through their trenches the morning after the ceasefire. In The Hook, July 1953, the silence was almost unsettling after years of gunfire. In 1951, the Volunteer Army launched an offensive against the U.S. Army's 1st and 7th Infantry Divisions. Since China had just established the PRC a year earlier, it lacked its own defense weapons industry. The troops mainly relied on Soviet-made arms, captured U.S. weapons, and leftover Japanese equipment, with the rare Czech ZB-26 machine gun in use due to limited ammunition availability. In 1950, North Korean forces advanced past the 38th parallel and launched attacks southward. Equipped with Soviet weapons and military advisors, their strength far exceeded that of the South Korean army, making their initial assault overwhelming and difficult to counter. On July 31, 1950, Douglas MacArthur, the Far East Command's leader, traveled from Tokyo to Taipei and met with Chiang Kai-shek. Earlier that year, the U.S. had stated it would not intervene in the Taiwan Strait, but after the North Korean invasion, it quickly changed its stance and deployed aircraft carriers to prevent a PLA attack on Taiwan. In 1950, General MacArthur and Chiang Kai-shek discussed military cooperation. The U.S. Army's intervention in the Taiwan Strait provided crucial support to the KMT government, helping it recover from the immediate threat posed by the PLA. During 1950, MacArthur and Chiang assessed the global strategic landscape, focusing on the rising communist threat in the Pacific. While MacArthur was planning a counteroffensive in Korea, Chiang hoped to deploy KMT troops, but his request was denied. In September 1950, U.S. forces pushed across the 38th parallel, driving North Korean troops back to the Yalu River. General MacArthur believed Korea could be unified without Chinese intervention. The image shows U.S. troops using a Browning .250 caliber machine gun against the opposing forces. A soldier is seen carrying a wounded comrade as the U.S. military advances deeper into North Korea in September 1950. In September 1950, General MacArthur, center-seated, led the amphibious landing at Incheon. This maneuver split the North Korean army, cutting off their southern push and leading to their significant defeat. In November 1950, after overcoming North Korean forces, the UNC troops found portraits of Soviet leader Stalin and North Korean leader Kim Il-sung, revealing external influences on the conflict. Chinese volunteer forces gather on the banks of the Yalu River in late 1950, preparing to cross into North Korea and join the Korean War. The U.S. Army is shown using M1918 Browning automatic rifles in November 1950. At this point, they were in retreat, struggling against the advancing forces. In December 1950, the Volunteer Army launched a major offensive. The UNC forces were unable to hold their ground and withdrew southward. The image captures the moment when volunteer troops entered Pyongyang. Volunteer forces captured retreating U.S. soldiers in December 1950. Many American POWs were taken during the early phase of the conflict by the Volunteer Army. A group of volunteer soldiers surrounds a U.S. tank, using RPG-43 anti-tank grenades to force the crew out, ultimately leading to their surrender. In December 1950, the Volunteer Army took control of Seoul and celebrated in front of the Korean Parliament. However, a strong UNC counteroffensive in early January 1951 forced them out. The city changed hands multiple times during the war. By 1951, China saw an increase in propaganda urging resistance against the U.S. and support for North Korea. Campaigns encouraged the public to back the volunteer forces fighting on the Korean Peninsula. In 1951, Chinese officials traveled to rural areas, using propaganda and recruitment efforts to encourage civilians to enlist in the army. The war played a significant role in strengthening nationalistic sentiment. In 1951, nationwide fundraising campaigns were launched in China to purchase aircraft and artillery, providing much-needed support to the volunteer forces fighting in Korea. Volunteer soldiers in 1951 are shown throwing grenades at UNC positions. Due to limited access to heavy weaponry, Their primary combat tools included light machine guns and Soviet-made RPG-43 anti-tank grenades. In 1951, the Volunteer Army broke through the 38th parallel and pushed southward. However, supply shortages forced them to pause every 7 days due to a lack of food and ammunition. The image shows troops using a Japanese-made 90mm mortar. Volunteer artillery units defending against UNC aircraft in 1951. To support the war effort, they also increased rail transport for delivering essential supplies. In February 1951, after retreating southward, the UNC regrouped for a counteroffensive. The image captures a fallen North Korean soldier as U.S. troops, armed with M1 Grand rifles, advance. A U.S. M4A3E8 tank stationed in Korea, March 1951. At this time, U.S. forces were reorganizing and preparing to use their mechanized strength to launch a counterattack. By March 1951, the U.S. Army, having regrouped, began launching new offensives against the volunteer forces. The image shows soldiers operating Browning light machine guns, with one assigned per squad. In May 1951, after General Ridgway replaced MacArthur, the U.S. leveraged its superior firepower and mechanization to launch counterattacks, capturing many volunteers. Ridgway played a crucial role in shifting the war's momentum. Volunteer troops engaged in a fierce battle in 1951, using an improvised Type 51 57mm gun to combat a U.S. tank. In 1951, volunteer forces fired an 82mm Katyusha rocket launcher, a Soviet-designed weapon originally mass-produced during World War II to fight German forces. By June 1951, the U.S. entertainment industry sent performers to boost troop morale at the front lines. The U.S. Army, having recovered from its 1950 setbacks, was now locked in a stalemate with the Volunteer Army. A Chinese arts troupe performing for volunteer soldiers on the front lines in 1951, providing entertainment to boost morale. In 1951, a North Korean arts troupe entertained volunteer forces, offering performances to raise spirits during the ongoing war. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Timeless Frames and hit the bell icon. There's so much more history waiting for you. See you in the next video.